Okay, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Friendly Circle Berlin. My name is Patrick, and today Deb Dana is joining us. And the title of our workshop is A Polyvagal Perspective on Overcoming Early Adversity. And I'll tell you a little about Deb. I think many of you know lots about Deb. I know she has many fans in our group. And I see all these people showing up today, well over 200 already. So it's great to have you all with us. So Deb Dana is a leading translator of polyvagal theory to clinical practice. She shows how this theory applies to relationships, mental health, and trauma, helping us to understand how to change the ways we navigate our daily lives. As a clinician specializing in complex trauma, she has revolutionized trauma treatment through her application of polyvagal theory. Trained in internal family systems, sensory motor psychotherapy, and other modalities, Deb brings deep expertise to understanding how our autonomic nervous system shapes our experiences. This workshop will explore how early adversity impacts nervous system development and offer practical approaches to create new neural pathways supporting healing and growth. And with that, I just want to thank you. This is Deb's second visit to our group, and we're so happy to see you back with us, Deb, and really appreciate you doing this for us today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Patrick. You have a lovely group. This even just hearing you welcome each other and join together, you can feel the nervous system intimacy that's been created, which is so lovely and so what is needed in our world today. So I'm looking forward to being here with you and doing a little bit of talking about nervous system and how we shape it, and then diving into questions that really are driving your experience. So just wanted to acknowledge as we start the sense of unsafety in the world that we all are living in right now. On a nervous system level, we are being besieged by cues of danger. Many of those cues are familiar to our early experience. And whenever a familiar cue of danger comes into our neuroceptive awareness, it prompts a move on the autonomic hierarchy. So many people, as we're navigating our daily lives in this moment in time, are feeling really challenged. Just try and stay anchored in any semblance of ventral regulation. We have a lot of sympathetically charged people stuck in fight and flight. We have a lot of people in a dorsal collapse, despair, hopelessness. And we don't have enough people who are able to find the way to ventral connection. And without that, our world is polarized, right? On a biological level, we're forgetting all of the sides and the stories and the ideologies that are out there. Simply on a biological level, we are in a place where we are living in a polarized world. So I love that you're wanting to return to exploring nervous system and how it shapes our early experience and how we overcome early patterns to come into a place of resilience, right? Connection. Um, so let's think about what happens, right? What happens? The when we come into the world, we have an autonomic expectation that we will be met by a regulated nervous system, right? And not a brain expectation, not a thought, but a biological expectation that we will be met by another regulated nervous system, because that is what is essential for growth and well-being, right? So if you think back to the way you came into the world and who met you when you came into the world, you can think, was that nervous system expectation met or not? Right? For many of us, that expectation was not met. You might have been met by a dysregulated human, by a human who was unpredictably regulated, by a human who was either actually harmful to you, hurtful to you, or was not present. And so in that way, negligent and harmful to you, right? Any of these experiences, your nervous system learns very quickly, don't reach out, right? Because if I reach out, either I'll get hurt or I'll reach out and no one will be there. So the nervous system takes that information and instead of building pathways of connection, builds pathways of protection, right? The hopeful news, the from the research that Steve Porges has done. Steve's the developer of polyvagal theory, and he began working with this theory with neonatal intensive care units. He was working with premature babies to try and figure out what happens when a baby comes into the world early and their regulating system is not ready to support them. So that's where it all began. But he discovered, quickly that if we come into the world and we're met with danger and we retreat into patterns of protection, the circuits of connection are still waiting there. Right? That's the hopefulness of polyvagal theory. The circuits are waiting there, and we can begin to travel those pathways as we, enter into adulthood even. Right? It's never too late to travel those pathways. My belief is that the nervous system has a longing to come to regulation and inherently knows how to get there. That's a belief that I carry. That's a belief that helps me in my personal life, right? My belief that my nervous system knows the way home to regulation. And it's a belief that certainly helps my clients, my complex trauma survivors who think they are too broken. They will never be able to find the way to safety and connection, and letting them know that your biology knows the way. It's already in there has been really helpful. So I want to put that out there to all of us today. Our biology knows the way home to safety and connection. And once we step foot on that path, it will help us come the rest of the way. So if we think about what happens, we come into the world, right? And we build these pathways of protection. They are adaptive survival responses. We want to remember the nervous system is always working in service of our survival. So think about some behavior, some thought, some story that you've been in, right? And as you reflect on it now, you might think, that's crazy. I know that happens for me a lot. I'll think, well, that was just crazy, right? That didn't get me anywhere. Or how irrational was that, right? That's the brain saying that. The nervous system simply enacts a response because it's afraid you're going to not survive. So we want to have some compassion and curiosity to what our nervous system's doing, right? Always acting in service of our safety and survival. So let's think about the patterns that were created in our growing up experiences, right? And those patterns we still carry with us today. And one of the things we want to remember is that we may shape new patterns, but our old habitual survival responses linger inside, right? And so when I am overwhelmed, when I am feeling as if the world is too much, my nervous system activates those old familiar habitual survival patterns, right? And I end up in a similar place to where I used to end up, right? Because that's the pathway that has been really traveled so often for my nervous system. So if we think about, let's think about the three organizing principles and how, how they first shape our survival, but then help us overcome those early adversity patterns. So the first is neuroception, right? And neuroception is how your nervous system is listening, is taking in cues and making a decision. Is it safe or not safe? That's the sole job of the nervous system, safe or not safe. It's all it does, micro moment to micro moment. Are you safe or not? Are you safe or not? Right? And then it takes an action on your behalf. So if you think about the cues that were present in your early experience, right? Maybe travel back to a moment in time that feels not too activating for you, right? We don't want to go back to the moments that feel overwhelming, but go back to a moment in your growing up years that felt a bit distressing, right? And let's look at the cues of safety and danger that were present, and let's start with the cues of danger, right? So in the nervous system, through neuroception, uses three pathways to find those cues. It listens inside your body. So if you go back and, remember being in that moment, what felt dangerous inside your body, right? How did your body find a cue of danger, right? I think I often feel my experience as a numbing in my body. So you might feel a numbing or a freezing or a stomach. The digestive system is impacted immediately by our dysregulation. Might be a breath change, might be a heart rate. So there's a cue of danger in that moment in your body. And then there's an environmental cue of danger. There's probably many environmental cues of danger. But think back to that moment, and in the environment around you, what were the cues of danger? Maybe there were sounds, maybe there were objects, maybe there were smells. What were cues of danger in that environment? Something about that place felt dangerous to your nervous system, right? And when we identify those, we begin to see through the eyes of the nervous system. So that was in the place. And then the last way neuroception works is between nervous systems. So between your nervous system and another nervous system that was in the space with you, there were cues of danger, right? Maybe a movement, maybe a facial expression, maybe tone of voice. You begin to get a sense of, oh, this is what my nervous system was taking in, and this is why it did whatever it did, right? And as we begin to identify the cues of danger from our past, we begin to see how flavors of those cues of danger come alive in the present, right? Flavors come alive in the present. Right. My home growing up was a very, very silent environment. Right. And that silence was felt dangerous to my nervous system. So in my present life, when the world gets too quiet, my nervous system neurocepts that as dangerous and prompts me to do something. Turn on the TV, turn on some music, get some sound going in my environment, right? And when I know that, I can say, oh, that's what's happening, right? It felt dangerous to my nervous system. So it says, get rid of the silence. So that's what the good news is around going back and finding out what are the cues of danger, because you can see them come alive in the present and you can do something now. When we were kids, we couldn't do anything, right? That the power dynamic is too off when you're kids, but now you're an adult and you have the ability to take an action, right? So the other thing we want to remember is at the same time the cues of danger are existing, cues of safety exist. So go back to that same moment in time that we just began to explore. And was there a cue of safety inside your body? Was there any cue of safety? Usually there's something we can find. Sometimes not. Sometimes my body would go so numb that I couldn't feel it at all. So, if that's the case, I can't find a cue of safety because I'm not in it anymore. But see, was there a cue of safety for you? In the environment, we identified the cues of danger, but was there also a cue of safety? Right? My house was very silent, but there were places in it that had a lot of color. And so the silence was dangerous, but I could depend on the places that were colorful to feel safe. Right? Why, I don't know, but my nervous system felt that as safe. And then between, were there any places where your nervous system and another nervous system felt safely connected, felt moments of safety? Maybe you had a pet. Pets are often the cues of safety that we can find in these places. Maybe there was a grandparent or a sibling or a friend or someone who was there. Because our system is looking for this both and cues of danger and cues of safety. And when we can identify them, we see how they come alive now in the present moment, right? And we can begin to reshape those pathways, right? Like my cue of danger around silence, I can begin to reshape, right? Because I can bring awareness to it. I can bring perception to the experience, and then I have choice. When you bring perception awareness, you can have choice, right? So that's neuroception, which then takes us to hierarchy. Hierarchy of the three states of the nervous system that Steve identified as moving in a predictable pathway, right? We're longing to be in this place of safety and connection, which is the top of the hierarchy. That's the ventral vagal state, right? The place of safety, connection, communication, passion, purpose, right? This is where recovery lives, in the land of ventral, right? We create a recovery lifestyle here in ventral, right? Because we can truly engage with the world from a place of feeling okay, right? And when we're in this place, our neuroception is one of safe enough, right? And so if I'm in a place of feeling regulated, my neuroception is one of safe enough. And then if a cue of danger comes in, I have the capacity to work with that cue of danger, right? Your prefrontal cortex, the brain, part of the brain that gives you language, makes up stories, that plans and thinks, is online and working with you when you are in this place of safety and connection. When you're in regulation, your mind body are working together beautifully, right? So I can begin to feel if I'm getting a bit disorganized, a bit overwhelmed, a bit dysregulated. I can feel it and I can take an action. If we get overwhelmed here, then we move down one step on the hierarchy to sympathetic fight and flight. Right. And I think we all know that place of feeling flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, hypervigilant, and can't sit still, and chaotic thinking, and all of the things that happen there. Right. If this is a place of drivenness, right, where we're seeking all the time, but we never can come to that place of feeling satisfied. Right. You're driven and sympathetic. You can feel purposeful and passionate, and in ventral. In sympathetic, you feel driven to accomplish. You feel driven. You're always seeking that next thing, right? So, if we grew up in a environment that was unsafe, your nervous system might have chosen the sympathetic, hypervigilance, managing, drivenness, seeking as a survival strategy, right? That may be the most familiar place for you. Right. I talked earlier about we can come home to ventral, and then I talk about having a home away from home. One of these survival states, sympathetic, or the next one we're going to talk about, is your home away from home. It's the survival state you go to more often than the other. Right. And some of us go more often to sympathetic. We are action taking, driven, on the move. That's a place where anxiety and anger live. Right. And you can think about that in the world of addiction. We can think about that in the world of recovery, right? Sympathetic can drive you to become sober, but ventral is where you create a recovery lifestyle, right? So sympathetic gives you all the shoulds or shouldn'ts. So whenever you're in a place of thinking I should or I shouldn't, you're in a sympathetic survival response. And for many of us growing up, we lived in that world. That was the safe place to live. Should or shouldn't, all the rules, know just what to do, very constrained, right? The other survival response, if sympathetic doesn't manage the problem for you, your nervous system can take you to dorsal, which is the place of collapse. That's my home away from home, the place of numbing, collapse, disconnect, disappear. Right. And you can feel that in your system when all of that chaotic energy from sympathetic drains from your system. And now you're going through the motions, but you really don't care. You don't have the energy. You're just sort of there, or even not there. You're floating somewhere. Right. And, for me, that was the place of safety. Growing up, be invisible, fly under the radar. And it may be for many of you as well. Right. So it's a very different experience than the sympathetic, big energy mobilization. It's the path of last resort for your nervous system. Right? Your nervous system takes you there when it feels there is no other way out. Right. So those are the two survival responses that live in our system. Right. They were created over the evolution of our nervous system, and they never go away. Right. So when I'm feeling less resilient, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, my nervous system will pretty quickly take me to that dorsal place of collapse, of disappear, right? Because that familiar pathway lives in my system, right? So just think for yourselves, where is your most familiar pathway? Are you more sympathetically driven or more dorsally? I call it dorsally dead, as my clients would say. They'd gone down the dorsal drain. So do you go down the dorsal drain with me, or do you get mobilized in action taking when you are feeling under threat or under stress? Right? That's what the nervous system does to keep you safe. Right? Again, to keep you safe. And the thing about the hierarchy, about understanding these states, is that we move down and up all the time, right? That no one stays anchored in ventral, right? Nobody, even if you grew up in a home that was filled with cues of safety, with deep connections that were safe, and your world felt safe, you still dysregulate, because every human dysregulates. Right. So we want to take that into account when we're thinking about how we navigate the world. Right. I know that when I got up this morning, my day was not going to be all ventral, because no day is. Right. And what do I need to manage the moments when I'm dysregulated? When I visit sympathetic, I get a bit anxious, or I get a bit angry, or I visit dorsal and I feel like I'm giving up, hopeless. Right? That's where I need to have strategies in order to come back, or to at least step a foot on the pathway that will bring me back. Every time we dysregulate and come back, we build resilience. Right? So, if you grew up having to overcome adversity, in some ways you were building a tougher nervous system. And now, if you can come to ventral, you can use all of those ways that you survived and build the pathways back to ventral and build that resilience, right? When we come into the world, we're meant to co-regulate with another human, right? That's the developmental experience. We co-regulate with a safe other human. And again, if that didn't happen, your nervous system would self-regulate instead, right? Because we have co-regulation and self-regulation, thankfully, because we don't always have a safe human to co-regulate with. For many, many kids growing up, there was no safe human that was dependably there, right? You might have had someone who was unpredictably there, and unpredictability is a cue of danger to the nervous system. Right? It's part of why what's going on in the world now is feels so dangerous. It's unpredictable. Nervous system finds that very scary. So if you didn't have a predictably regulated human to help you co-regulate, you self-regulated instead. Right? And think about your world now, and you might be very, very successful. You might, from the outside looking in, look like life is good because you're productive, you're successful, right? People might think you have it all. And yet on the inside, it may feel empty, right? Because you're self-regulating out of fear rather than from a place of safety. That happens all the time for us, right? We learn to self-regulate, but we can't do it from a place of feeling safe. We do it out of a fear. We're driven to self-regulate. And again, the good news is that can all be shaped differently. Right? We don't want to give up our self-regulating capacities, but we want to be able to co-regulate as well. This group, as I was listening to you all say hello to each other, sound like you're all very nicely connected. You like each other. You can feel that in the energy. You co-regulate, right? And you can then self-regulate from safety. Right? It is community like this that builds the capacity for co-regulation. And from a place of co-regulation, we can then offer that to others. We can find our way to ventral. We can stay there both as a collective nervous system, which is what I feel with all of you. You have a collective nervous system that feels very safe and welcoming, right? And then as individual nervous systems, right? So that's the beauty of neuroception, hierarchy, and then co-regulation, which is that third organizing principle, right? And we can survive without others, but we cannot thrive. Right? You can survive, but you can't thrive unless you have safe others in your network, in your world to reach out to engage in reciprocity with. Right? I offer when I'm feeling regulated and have something to offer, and I receive when I'm feeling drained and need something. That's reciprocity. And you know from your connections with others, it's not a one-to-one thing. I offer and then you offer. It doesn't work that way, right? I may be in a place where I am feeling very anchored in regulation and I can offer a lot. And you may be in a place where you are in need of my co-regulation, right? And it may stay that way for days or weeks, and then it will come back the other way, right? It's the relationships come back. It's a relationship that for too long stays stuck in one way, right? For whatever reason, the other person is unable to find a way to enough regulation to then offer something back. Those relationships are challenging. Right. And I think we all know, we can all remember relationships where the other person was unable to fill in the blank, unable to find sobriety, unable to find regulation, unable to come to a place where we could, connect differently. Right. And I say unable because on a nervous system level, it's not that they're unwilling. And we want to make sure we remember that. They're not unwilling, they're biologically unable. Right. When you're in regulation in ventral, you have the capacity for change. You have the capacity to engage in new patterns. When you move into survival, sympathetic or dorsal, your biology closes the door to change. You are no longer able. I may still want to do it differently. I may still have a longing to live a different lifestyle, but my biology will not allow it. And I think that changes how we look at things, right? It changes how we look at others, how we understand ourselves, right? I can have perhaps a bit of self-compassion, right? I can have curiosity for somebody else's experience rather than labeling them, right? And I think we often label people in the clinical world. We often say they're non-compliant, they're not trying hard enough, they don't really care, they don't want it badly enough, right? You can translate that to all of your worlds and just fill in the sentence, right? Because our brains make up a story to make sense of the other person's behavior. What we want to say, the story we want our brain to make up is they're dysregulated and unable to do something different right now. Change is not possible when someone is dysregulated. Right. So then the work for ourselves and for others becomes how do I find the way back to regulation? Right? How do I help someone else find the way back to regulation? Right? One of the ways we do it that I think you all do so beautifully is with caring connection. Right? You welcome somebody with curiosity, with an open heart, without judgment. That's a ventral experience. If you are anchored in that place, you are sending that message to another human nervous system. You're saying you are safe here. Come on in. You won't be judged, right? And that's part of the challenge in being connected with others, right? How do we come into connection and leave the judgment somewhere else, right? One of the ways I think we do it is remembering our own dysregulated nervous systems, right? I've worked with a lot of people recently who are bringing experiences that I haven't had. And I will say, I have not had that experience. I can't imagine that experience. I really can't imagine some of the experiences that people are having nowadays. But my nervous system has been in that dorsal collapse. So I know that, right? I know the nervous system experience. I don't know the actual experience, but oh, my nervous system can really recognize in you what that disappearing, that dissociation, that floating, whatever it is, right? The way that brings us together. And I think that's important for us to think about right now, that the nervous system is the common denominator in our human experience. We all have one, and it works along these organizing principles. It brings us together, right? You know, I think about the ways we label ourselves, right? We label ourselves in interesting ways, right? In the clinical world, we diagnose people, we give them a diagnosis. It's a label, right? In the 12-step world, we label ourselves as, you know, what kind of addict am I? What am I, right? Well, if we could bring ourselves together and say, I'm a human who dysregulates in these particular ways, it brings us together. It takes all those categories away, which for me do not feel useful, right? It's like, how do you dysregulate? Tell me. You know, tell me, are you more sympathetic? You more dorsal? What happens? And how do you find your way to regulation? That's, I think, the experience I want to explore with you, right? Because then we understand each other through our nervous system. We create what I call autonomic intimacy, which I think is really special, and it is really a lovely way of moving the world forward, right? Together, because we understand on a nervous system level what's happening. So um, yeah, so again, if we think about all of this, we understand how the nervous system works. We also understand that in every moment, your nervous system is being shaped and reshaped, right? However you ended up wherever you are in this moment in life, right? I'm 72. I've got 72 years of nervous system experiences that have shaped my patterns, and I'm not stuck in that because this moment in time is also shaping. And I can intentionally shape my system towards connection. Again, the hopefulness of Steve's theory, right? That we shape our systems micro moment by micro moment. And I think that's one of the things I want to talk about before we move into Q&A. I want to do micro moments. I also want to talk about, in order to reshape the system, we have to identify the worry and the hope. You can't move into change by just wanting it up here. You have to identify, what is the nervous system worried would happen if you made that change, right? If you think about, you know, helping people enter into sobriety, we ask the nervous system, what is it afraid is going to happen if you give up, fill in the blank, whatever that is, right? So if you give up using, what is the nervous system afraid would happen? And it will tell you what it's afraid of. Is it afraid? It is afraid something worse is going to happen. And so it's going to keep you in that place until you address that fear, that worry, right? So think about something, some small thing. We always want to start with something small. Think about some small thing that you would like to change, something you do repeatedly, routinely, a habit, whatever that you would like to change. What is that? And name it for yourself, right? Something you'd like to change, little thing. And then ask your nervous system, right? Ask your survival system, because it's rooted in a survival state. What is it afraid would happen if you change that pattern? What is afraid would happen? And it's going to tell you what the fear is. So I'll give us an example as a simple one, just doesn't mean a lot to, it feels like it doesn't mean a lot. My nervous system thinks it does. I'm trying to stop doing a number of the things that I've been doing, and invite in. I want to go back to in person. So Patrick, I'm thinking of you. I want to go back to in person. So, I'm trying to invite more of that and stop a lot of the other things that I've been doing. And when I ask my nervous system, what is it afraid would happen? It says, if you only do in person, you're not going to reach the people you want to reach. You're never going to be forgotten. And then you can see where that's going to go. I can catastrophize with the best of them. Pretty soon I'm unknown. I'm unemployed. I'm on the street. You can feel it, right? Right. So my nervous system is saying, don't do that. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep pushing, because that's the only way you'll be safe. Right. So you just think about what your nervous system told you. It's giving you the information you need, because it needs to be reassured before it will allow change to happen. Right. So that's the first thing we do. We first identify the worry. Then we identify the hope. What's the hope? What might be possible if you stepped out of that pattern, whatever it is? What moment of difference might be possible? Because that lives in your system as well. And just to let your nervous system show you what might be possible. Right? When I was just doing that, I just had an image of sitting in a room filled with people who were all, just connected and exploring their nervous systems. It felt really lovely. Might be possible, right? So when you identify the worry, then you can identify the hope. Then you know how to move forward. Right. But for any change to happen, that has to happen first, whether it's a little thing like my work experience, or whether it's a big thing like giving up a substance, or stopping cutting, or not eating differently, or any of these things. Doesn't matter, little or big. You've got to identify with the nervous system, what is it worried about first, right? Because your nervous system will triumph over your brain's desire every time. Your body is going to win that fight. If the body and the brain are on a different page, the body's going to win that fight every time. Right. So one more thing before we do talk about micro moments is to remember, if we dysregulate all the time in little ways, right? Big ways sometimes, but little ways all the time. If we know that moving out of regulation is normal and expected part of everyday life, how do we plan for that? Right? If we think of people who are, just learning about regulation, right? And when they drop out of regulation, the story comes in. You see, I can't do this, right? I'm too broken. I'm too toxic. I'll never learn, right? Then that's the brain story that comes, right? How can we be proactive and help people understand normal and expected? Everybody does it, and we're going to build in some pathways so that oh, you've dropped out of regulation, and you will come back, right? You will come back. Co-regulation is one of the most beautiful ways to do that, right? I know that I could reach out to one of you. I'm looking at your faces. I'm thinking, oh, you all look like I could reach out. If I know I'm beginning to dysregulate, I could shoot an email to any of you and say, feeling a bit distressed, right? And you would reach back, right? Which would be a disconfirming experience for my nervous system. My nervous system's belief is I reach out and nobody's there, right? That's the early childhood trauma we live in. Nervous system's belief is reach out, nobody's there. So it says don't reach out. Maybe I reach out, you're there. And my nervous system went, oh my gosh, that's not always true, is it? It's that disconfirming experience. That's what, as helping professionals or as, however we're connected with others, that's what we're trying to do, is offer a disconfirming experience to another nervous system, right? That sense of people are there. You can reach out, right? So when we begin to dysregulate, we reach out, somebody's there, we come back to regulation. We're building that, we're strengthening that pathway, right? And think about how that applies to ongoing recovery, right? Dysregulate, come back, strengthens the resilience there. We are all going to dysregulate. So let's figure out what we do about that when it happens, right? Because remember, when I dysregulate, my old familiar survival pathways are just waiting to help me, right? So if my survival pathway is to reach for a substance, that pathway is waiting because it has been a dependable resource for my nervous system, right? So we want to remember that and talk about it in a way that we know it's going to happen. How do we plan for that? So the last thing I want to talk about before we dive into some conversation, which is really what I love most, is micro moments, right? The nervous system changes by doing small things over and over. Again, that understanding helps us keep moving forward, right? My clients would tell me they there's no way they could do a half-hour practice. I say, of course not. That's too much for your nervous system, right? Instead of beating yourself up about it and thinking that you're never going to heal, understand your nervous system doesn't need that, first of all, and it's too big a challenge for your nervous system to do, right? Your nervous system needs tiny moments. We call them micro moments of okayness, of regulation, of returning to regulation. Micro moments, staying there for 10 seconds is amazing, right? The more we do that, the more your system creates patterns of connection, right? So we don't need these long, sustained times of feeling regulated and connected in order for the nervous system to shape itself in a new direction. That's important for us to remember. So we want to bring in practices that help us look for the micro moments, right? Because when you mark the micro moments, they take up more space in your system, right? So I created the glimmer practice, right? So glimmers are the tiny moments of okayness that happen all the time, right? And if we can mark those moments, even just for a few seconds, that's all we need to do. So I'm going to invite you to think, is there a moment that's happened in your day, whatever time it is in your day, right? It's early afternoon for me. I don't know what it is for you, but think about your day so far. And was there a tiny moment when you felt, oh, that felt nice? It might have brought a smile or a moment of ease or joy or connection. I've had a ton of those moments just looking at your faces, right? That those tiny moments of, oh, there, right? I heard a bird sing this morning. I had my window open, a bird sing, little things. So just think of that little moment, right? And bring it back to life for a minute and feel it come alive in your body again, this mind-body system, right? That's a glimmer. That's a tiny moment of regulation. And the more you mark those tiny moments, they build. The research says that they don't just come in and then go. They're not a one and done experience. A micro moment comes in, and then another one comes in, and they begin to gather. And what they do is they increase the set point of your regulated system, right? So they increase your ventral vagal set point, is what the research says. So you have more access to regulation, right? So maybe my baseline was here. And then after 6 months of micro moments, my baseline is now here, right? So I don't go down so low anymore. I'm up here, right? So it increases your set point, which is the phasic vagal experience, but it also, that's the tonic phasic experience. It also helps your phasic experience, meaning when you dysregulate, you can come back more quickly. When you dysregulate, it's not as intense. You don't stay there as long. It doesn't happen as frequently, right? So that's change. That's how we measure change, right? Frequency, intensity, duration. Tiny micro moments create change in your nervous system, right? So again, if we just stick to the biology, it can lead us to building a more regulated lifestyle, creating a true recovery lifestyle, and then helping others come to that same place.
Okay. So, Deb, we've come to 2 minutes to the hour. I don't want to impose on your time. You've been very generous doing this for us today.
You have a lovely group, Patrick. They're just
Oh, we got a great group. Yeah.
you have a great group. I can feel all the energy, which is really lovely. Really
Yeah.
lovely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's turned out real well. That's why we keep doing it.
Apparently,
Yeah.
you got something good going on here, huh?
Yeah, and we got lots of people because the 12-step ethos of service is really alive and well in this group. So
Yeah.
that's what's kept us going, sort of having a bit of
And
structure.
I will say about 12 step, I think the way you do 12 step is probably very nervous system friendly, right? Because not all 12 step programs are nervous system friendly, right? Not all sponsors understand the need for for a welcome and a gentleness and an invitation, and so the fact that you're bringing this into the 12 step world, I think, is so important, so important. So thank you for
Oh,
doing that. Yeah.
hey, we learn from each other too. The fact of being open to all the different groups, because I'm an AA guy, but I learned
Hmm.
so much from when we opened up, especially from the people coming in from ACA, the Adult Children of Alcoholics
Yep. Yep.
program, because that's a different,
Yep.
they're
Yeah.
not coming in like
Yeah.
me when I come in with my fight for everybody. They're a different approach. They're just
Absolutely.
I've calmed
Yeah.
down over the years, but but
You
but
found a little more regulation over
yeah,
the years, huh?
yeah. But
Yeah.
also I had just very loving, kind sponsors, too,
See, that's
over the years.
that's the key, isn't it? To have sponsors who are welcoming and loving and kind and not shaming and blaming and critical. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Well,
yeah, it's beautiful.
anyway, we could have a whole conversation about
We
that, but
could.
it's true.
Yep.
We learn from each other so much
Yeah,
in all these
yeah,
different programs. And that's what I
yeah.
really love about this group, that we have all these people coming from different
It is amazing.
fellowships and
Yeah,
so we all kind of put it in the
yeah.
mix, and it seems to work.
Love it. I love it.
So,
Love it. Yeah.
so thank you so much. Really
Mm.
appreciate you, Deb, and the work
It
that
was
you're doing. It's phenomenal.
it was a delight to be here, and I imagine we will do this again sometime, Patrick. Yes?
Absolutely, would love to. Hey, I got
Let's
that
do
on the
it.
recording.
Let's do it. I would love to because I
Fantastic.
always love showing up with you guys. You are a
Oh,
wonderful group. So yes.
oh, thank you, Deb. Is there some
Mhm.
little thought you'd like to end on?
I mean, I think in the world we're living in right now, I often say to people that if we can be regulated, we make a difference in the world. I think that we will change the world one nervous system at a time. So if you can find your way to regulation, when you're regulated, offer that energy out into the world and the world will begin to change.